As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, similarly the living entity is covered by different degrees of this dust. There are three degrees of covering of the living entity by which each clear consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestations like smoke in the fire, dust on a mirror, at womb about the living. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be little perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits its Krishna consciousness slightly, it may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary when there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. The state of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts. The smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke in the fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So it's very nice verse. Dhumena vriyate vani yatha darsho malinicha. Yathol vena vruto garvas tatha teridam avrutam. So lust actually is a formidable flow in Krishna consciousness. And there is no limit actually that when the lust manifests, there's actually quite uncertain now. So when we read the news, actually see that uh, at very early age also the lust started manifesting, and especially the pornographic movies on YouTube and also on mobile platform and OTT platform and exhibition and co-education. And even in America, when I was there, the dormitories also were shared by males and females. At that volatile age of 16 or say 18, if they to share rooms and dormitories, you can expect what is going to happen. So there is no prohibition, there is no distancing. Some distancing is required, otherwise that age is little dangerous age, right? So I'm not a fanatic, but what I've seen Bhagavatam says that we should be some little distance should be maintained between opposite sexes. So dhumena vriyate vanhir yatha darsho malena yathulvena vruto garvas tatha tene mahavrutam. Dhumena by smoke avriyate is covered. Vanni fire yatha just as arsha a mirror. Malena by dust cha and yatha just as ulbena by the womb. Avruta is covered. Garbha and embryo. Tatha in the same way. Tena by that lust. Idam this world, knowledge, avrutam is covered. Just as fire is covered by smoke, a mirror by dust, and an embryo by the womb, so the true knowledge of the living entity, a living being, remains covered by different degrees of lust. Sarartha Varshini. Lust is the enemy of all, not just of one particular person. This is explained through these examples. Although fire may be dirty and covered by smoke, it can still perform its function of burning. But when a mirror is covered by dust, it loses the characteristics of cleanliness and cannot perform its function of reflecting the image of the object in front of it, although it is still accepted as a mirror. An embryo covered by the womb cannot move its hands and feet or nor can it be recognized as a baby. Similarly, one can remember a supreme goal only when lust is not deep. When lust becomes very deep, such remembrance is impossible. And when it is extremely deep, the world itself appears to be void of consciousness. So you'll see that when I was in America, I visited many places, Las Vegas, and so many places, and I saw that covering of sex desire is so deep out there. And so you see that the Western nightlife, nightclubs, and I used to walk to Boston, old Boston, and New York, Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, Brooklyn, and so much Venice Beach. It is all surcharged by lust, kama, completely desire for opposite sex. And so this is so then remembrance of Bhagavan cannot come there. Very difficult actually. If so much lust and so much attraction for opposite sex is there, everyone has some attraction, which is there also, but that also has degrees. So the knowledge of those jivas averse to self-realization is covered by 3 degrees of lust: mild, mrudu, moderate, madhya, and intense tivra. A person whose knowledge is covered by a mild degree of lust can accept instruction on Atma Tattva, knowledge of the self, to a certain extent. When a person's knowledge is covered by a moderate degree of lust, then it is completely impossible for him to understand even a little knowledge of the self. And when knowledge is covered by an intense degree of lust, knowledge of the self is not pursued at all. So the Bhakti-Vidanta Thakur quotes Krishna as saying, this whole world is covered by that very lust. In some places mildly, in some places deeply, and in some places very deeply. I will illustrate this with an example. Please listen. A conscious jiva who is mildly covered by lust, just as a fire is covered by smoke, can perform remembrance of Bhagavan, for example. So if suppose a jiva is covered by mild lust, little lust, then he can still remember Bhagavan. This is the situation of jivas who are taken of Nishkam Karma Yoga. This structure is open. As in the budding stage of the flower. Even if the conscious jiva has a human body, when his consciousness is deeply covered by lust, like a mirror covered by dust, then it is not possible for him to remember the supreme control. This is the condition of the extreme moralist and atheist, or jivas whose consciousness is shrunken or contracted, sankuchita chetana. Examples of these are animals and birds. A jiva whose consciousness is covered by intense lust, like the embryo covered by the womb, possesses completely covered consciousness, acharya chetana. Examples are creepers, stones, and trees. Avrutam jnanam etena jnanino nitya vairina kamarupena kanteya dushkurena nalena cha. Avrutam, covered, jnanam, knowledge of discrimination, etena, by this, jnanina, of the wise, living entity, nitya vairina, by his eternal enemy, kamarupena, in the form of lust, kanteya, O Arjuna, dushpurena, never to be satisfied, analena, like fire, cha, also. Arjuna, the true knowledge of the wise living entity is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust. This lust burns like fire and can never be satiated. Lust is indeed ignorance for all jivas. As Sri Bhagavan explains, he is explaining in this verse beginning with Avrutam. The desire to enjoy the sense objects has been described as the eternal enemy. Therefore, it must be destroyed by all means. Understand that Kama Rupa, the form of lust, means that ignorance is not different from lust. It is indeed ignorance that envelops the real nature of the jiva. Here the word cha has been used to mean like, just as fire cannot be satiated by pouring ghee onto it, similarly lust cannot be fulfilled by enjoying the sense objects. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, na jatu kama kamana upabhogena shamyati havisha krishna bharatmeva bhuya eva vivartate. Fire is not satiated by ghee, rather it increases. Similarly, by enjoying sense objects, the thirst for sense enjoyment increases more and more. It does not become pacified. Saratu Vachini Prakashita Vritti. Lust is the root cause of lamentation and distress and has been compared to fire. Kamanalam Madulavai Shamayan Durapai Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.25. Lust can never be satisfied by enjoying the sense objects. It is like a fire that cannot be extinguished by drops of honey in the form of momentary satisfaction. Evam graheshu avirato vishayan vidhai sukhai seva sevamano na chatushyat ajyasto kair ivanalaham. The sage Saubhari was not able to attain peace by profusely enjoying sense objects, just as fire is not pacified when drops of ghee are poured on it. Sevato varsha pugan me urvasya adhara shavam na trupyati atmahu kamo vandir ahupi yatha. Even after I had served the so-called nectar of the lips of the Urvashi for many years, within my heart, my lusty desires kept rising again and again and were never satisfied. Just like fire, which can never be extinguished by the oblations of ghee poured into its flames. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes Krishna as saying, "This lust is indeed ignorance for the jivas and is their eternal enemy. It covers the conscious jivas in overwhelming fire. Just as I, Sri Bhagavan, am a conscious being, similarly the jiva is also enemy. The difference between my nature and that of the jiva is that I am infinitely conscious and omnipotent, where the jiva is atomically conscious and can only act because of the energy I give him. The eternal occupation of the jiva is to be my eternal servant. This is called prema or nishkam jeva dharma. The eternal, selfless, unalloyed function of the living entity. Every conscious being, by his constitutional nature, is endowed with free will. It is therefore by his own free will that he is my eternal servant. According to the degree to which he properly uses his free will, he can act as my eternal servant. The misuse of that pure free will is called ignorance, avidya, or lust, kama. Those jivas who do not serve me by correctly using their free will have to accept lust, an enjoying mood, which is the perverted form of the jiva's pure state, prema. As they become more and more covered by degrees of this lust, they gradually become like inert matter. This is called karma bandhana, the bondage of the living entity due to karma. It is also called samsara yatana, the journey of agonizing birth and death. आवृतम ज्ञानमेतेन ज्ञानिनो नित्यवैरिणा कामरूपेण कौन्तेय दुष्पूरेणानलेन च आवृतम covered jnanam pure consciousness etena by this jnanaha of the knower nityavairina by the eternal enemy kama rupena in the form of lust kaunteya o son of Kunti dushpurena never to be satisfied anilena by the fire cha also. Thus, a man's pure consciousness is covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. It is said in the Manusmriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus this material world is called Maithunya Aga, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this lust is the symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyers. Verse 340, Indriyani mano buddhir asya adhishthanam uchyate eter vimohayati eshadgyanam avrittadehinam. Indriyani, the senses, mana, the mind, buddhi, the intelligence, asya, of this lust, adhishthanam, sitting place, uchyate is called, etahi, by all these, vimohayati, bewilders, esha, this lust, jnanam, knowledge of the covering Dehinam of the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust which wells the real knowledge of the living entity and bewildered. The enemy has captured different stations and living soul. And therefore Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus the mind is the reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification. And as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lust intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter. And thus, with the mind and senses, the spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this as true happiness. This false identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. यस्यात्म बुद्धि गुणेपे त्रिधातु के स्वरी कलत्रादि भौम इच्छति यतीर्थ बुद्धि सल्लेन करिचित जनेश विद्नेषु सैव पोखरा. A human being who identifies this body made of three elements with himself, considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of birth as worshipable, and who goes to the places of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered as an ass or a cow. Indriyani manobuddhir asya adhishthānam uccate etar vimohayanti esha jnanam avritya dehinam. Indriyani, the senses, manaha, mind, buddhi, intelligence, asya, of this lust, adhishthānam, the shelter, uccate, it is said, etahi, by this, vimoheti, utterly bewilders, esha, this lust, jnanam, knowledge, avrit, the covering, dehinam, the embodied being. The senses, mind and intelligence are said to be the dwelling places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the knowledge of the living entity in complete bewilderment. Sarartha, where does this lust reside? In response to this question, Sri Bhagavan is speaking this verse beginning with Indriyani. The senses, mind and intelligence, which are like a great fort or capital city, are the abode of this enemy, lust. The sense objects such as sound are like the capital of a king. The embodied soul is bewildered by all of them. A person can easily conquer his enemy when he has discovered his enemy's hiding place and destroyed it. The senses are the shelter or hiding place of this lust. Therefore, by subduing the senses, lust can be easily defeated. Bhagavan Shri Krishna has compared lust to a very powerful king. The senses to the king's capital, which is protected by a great fort, and the various sense objects to be the kingdom and the subjects of the king. So the Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when the pure, cognizant living entity accepts a body, he is known as Dehi, embodied. As long as lust dwells in the senses, mind and intelligence, it keeps the knowledge of the living entity covered. The subtle state of lust is avidya or ignorance. It is this ignorance only that originally offers the jiva, who is an atomic conscious entity with a pure ego, the initial veil of ignorance, material false ego. Material intelligence acts as a shelter for this lust or ignorance. Later, when the material false ego has developed, material intelligence provides the mind as a second shelter for lust. The mind that runs after sense objects then provides the senses as the third place of shelter for this lust. Taking shelter of these three places, lust casts the living entity into worldly enjoyment. When a living entity turns towards Sri Bhagavan by his own will, it is called knowledge or vidya. And when he willfully becomes averse to Sri Bhagavan, it is called ignorance or avidya. So we are discussing here that what is our enemy on the path of devotional service. And we discussed that lust alone is our enemy. So today we may have to go to one program here in Virat Nagar. So because Dandi Maharaj told me to wrap up the class rather quickly. And also today is Ekadashi. So little low on energy. So I'll stop here and continue next time. I think tomorrow also there will be class. So Vishaka Didi will let you know. And I hope by 7 o'clock we'll be able to make it tomorrow. So thank you so much for a short class. But we read 3 verses, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow also. Thank you so much. Panchakalpatarubhasya kripa sindhubhasya paridanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranams. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Ananga Mohan Prabhu, Jai Divani, please.
Yes.
श्री गुरु गोरंगा गंधर्व का गिरिधारी राधा विनोद बिहारी जी की जय। ओम विष्णु पार स्तोत्र श्रीमद् भक्तिवेदांत विष्णु देवती गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। ओम विष्णु पार स्तोत्र श्रीमद् भक्तिवेदांत वेदांती गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नीति लेप प्रविष्ट विष्णु पार शता श्रीमद् भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नीति लेप प्रविष्ट विष्णु पार स्तोत्र शता श्रीमद् भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नीति लेप प्रविष्ट विष्णु पार स्तोत्र शता श्रीमद् भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज की जय। नीति लेप प्रविष्ट विष्णु पार स्तोत्र शता श्रीमद् भक्तिवेदांत केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नीतिले प्रविष्ट विष्णु पर स्तोत्र भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जी। नीतिले प्रविष्ट परम भगवत श्री गौर किशोरदास बाबा जी महाराज की जी। नीतिले प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद ठाकुर की जी। नीतिले प्रविष्ट वैष्णव